So after the recent shooting in Minneapolis, the White House put out an official statement explaining their take on what happened and what they think needs to be done. In this explainer, we're going to break down the 5 main arguments from Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt's statement to really get a handle on the administration's message here.
Right off the bat, the statement opens by talking about the chaotic scenes in Minnesota. You know, that choice of words is really important. It immediately frames the whole situation as being out of control, which then sets the stage for the administration to step in as the ones who can restore order.
The statement really builds its case in 5 distinct steps. First, we'll look at their official version of the incident. Then, we'll dive into who they're blaming for it all. After that, we'll cover the 3 specific demands they're making, how they tie this local event to the national border debate, and finally, how they argue that the public is actually on their side.
Okay, so first up, how does the administration officially describe the shooting? Well, the statement starts by laying out the facts as they see them and giving an update on where the investigation stands right now. So they confirm the investigation is very much active, and they name-drop several big federal agencies, Homeland Security investigations, the FBI, and even an internal review by CBP. Now, highlighting all this federal involvement isn't an accident. It's meant to establish federal authority over the situation right from the get-go. The official line is to let that investigation play out, but having those agencies there sends a pretty strong message about who's in charge. That brings us to the second part of the statement, which is where things shift from what happened to why it happened. This is where they start building a really clear argument and pointing fingers to assign responsibility for the whole thing.
The argument being made is that to really understand the shooting, you can't just look at it in a vacuum. You have to look at the environment that allowed it to happen in the first place. So, according to the press secretary, who created that environment?
And they do not hold back. The statement gets really specific, calling out Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey by name, along with other elected Democrats. Then, the blame gets cast even wider to include a group they call left-wing agitators, who they claim helped create a hostile situation on the ground.
So here's how they connect the dots. The statement accuses these leaders of doing specific things, spreading lies about federal law enforcement, actively blocking local police from working with ICE, and even stirring up violence. The central claim here is that all of this alleged obstruction is what led directly to such a dangerous and tragic outcome.
Now, to really raise the stakes, the statement uses some incredibly strong language to describe the individuals that federal officers are supposedly after. I mean, using words like these, it's a clear attempt to frame their agents' work as this critical, urgent mission to protect society from the worst of the worst. It's language designed to justify their presence and their tactics. So after pointing fingers, the statement pivots and says, okay, here's the solution. This next part is all about action. It lays out a very direct 3-point ultimatum for Minnesota's leadership.
And here they are, 3 demands that are presented as pretty much non-negotiable. As you can see, they want all incarcerated criminal illegal aliens turned over for deportation. They want any new arrestees handed over immediately. And they want local police to actively help federal officers. This isn't just a suggestion, it's framed as an ultimatum, basically designed to erase any separation between local and federal immigration enforcement in the state.
And here's the carrot they're offering, right? It's a very clear trade-off. The statement says that if local leaders just comply with these demands, then the need for a heavy federal CBP presence will go away. So they're essentially framing cooperation as the only way to de-escalate the situation.
Okay, so this is where the statement zooms out. It takes this one local incident in Minneapolis and connects it to a much, much bigger argument. It's not treated as some isolated event. Instead, it's used as a perfect example to make a broader point about national immigration policy.
This slide really lays out the 2 competing pictures the statement is trying to paint. On one hand, it portrays the previous administration's policies as having opened America's borders, which they say led to crime. And on the other hand, it presents the current administration's approach as being all about accountability, securing a border, and keeping a promise to deport criminals and stand with angel families. And to make that point feel less like a policy debate and more personal, more real, the statement brings up several victims by name, like Jocelyn Nungarai, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin. By invoking these angel families, the administration is trying to highlight what it sees as the very real, tragic human cost of the policies it's fighting against.
All right, we're at the final piece of the puzzle. This is where the administration argues that what they're doing isn't just their own agenda, but that it's a direct reflection of what the American people actually want. And their whole case for having this popular support, it really boils down to one big number, 80%. So what does that 80% actually refer to?
Well, according to the press secretary, that's the percentage of Americans who are in favor of deporting illegal aliens who've been convicted of violent crimes. By using this statistic, the statement tries to position its policy not as something extreme or controversial, but as just mainstream common sense that's backed by a huge majority of the public.
And they wrap up the entire argument with this one very powerful, very blunt statement. It frames the whole issue not just as a policy disagreement, but as a fundamental question of national identity and survival. It's a line that's really designed to leave no room for debate about how strongly they feel.
And so, that's where we're left. The entire statement is built around this very clear choice. Cooperation leads to order, but resistance leads to chaos. The document lays out the administration's position in no uncertain terms, leaving everyone to think about the consequences of both paths. The question that's just left hanging in the air is, what happens if that cooperation never comes?